Today our objective is to be able to solve quadratic equations by taking the square root. Our first step will be to isolate the x to the second term. Then we will find the square root of each side and simplify. On number 1, we need to get the x to the second by itself by doing the opposite of minus 16, which is plus 16. So I'm going to add 16 to both sides to get x to the second equals 16. Then I take the square root of both sides of the equation. My answer would be x is positive or negative 4. Because if you take positive 4 and square it, you get 16. And when you take negative 4 and square it, you get 16. On number 2, I got to get the x to the second term by itself. So first I'm going to do the opposite of minus 36. I'm adding 36 to both sides. Then I will have 4x squared equals 36. I need to divide by 4. Then I'll have x to the second by itself. X to the second would equal 9. Then I would take the square root of both sides. My answers would be positive and negative 3. On number 3, I need to add 14 to both sides. Once I do that, I'll have x to the second equals negative 36. When I take the square root of both sides, I'm going to have no solution. You cannot take the square root of a negative number. There is no number to the second power that gives you a negative 36, so there is no solution. On number 4, I need to add 32 to both sides. Once I do that, I'll have 2n to the second equals 0. Then I'm dividing by 2 to get n to the second equals 0. When I take the square root of both sides, I'll have one answer, which is n equals 0. On number 5, I need to isolate the x to the second term by taking away 3 from both sides. I'll get 1/4 x squared equals negative 3. Then I'll multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 1/4, which is 4, to get x to the second equals negative 12. When I take the square root of both sides, there is no solution. You cannot take the square root of a negative 12 because there's not a number times itself to give you a negative 12. On number 6, I can take the square root of both sides. When I take the square root of x minus 1 to the second, I just get an x minus 1. But then I would have it equal to 5 and negative 5, because the square root of 25 is 5 or negative 5. Then I'll solve both equations for x by adding 1. My first solution is x equals 6. If I add 1 to my second equation, I'll get x equals negative 4. On number 7, I have a 4 in front of the parentheses, so first I'm going to divide both sides by 4, and then I'll have an x minus 3 to the second power equals 9/4. Then I can take the square root of both sides, and I would have an x minus 3 equals positive 3/2, or an x minus 3 equals negative 3/2. Then I can add 3 to both sides to solve both equations for x. This would be a 1.5 plus 3, which would give me a 4.5 or 4.5. Here I would add 3 to both sides. This is like a negative 1.5 plus 3. That would give me a positive 1.5. So my two solutions are x equals 4.5 and 1.5. Sometimes the directions are going to ask us to round to the hundredth place. So like on number 8, I would still isolate the variable x to the second by taking away 8 from both sides. Then I'll get x to the second equals 11. Then I can take the square root of both sides. There's not a whole number times itself to give me 11. So if I use my calculator and take the square root of 11 and round to the hundredths, I would have x equals positive or negative 3.32. On number 9, I need to get the x to the second by itself, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides to get 5x to the second equals 2. Then divide by 5. I would get x to the second equals 2/5, or you could say 0.4. Then you're taking the square root of both sides. So when I use my calculator to take the square root of 0.4 and round to the hundredths place, I would have a positive or negative 0.63. On number 10, first I'm going to add 30 to both sides. I would get 3x to the second equals 34. Then I would divide both sides by 3. When I divide by 3, I would have x to the second equals 34/3, or you could say 11 1/3. Then you're taking the square root of both sides. I'm going to round to the hundredths place when I take the square root of both sides. I should get a positive and negative 3.37 when using the calculator. All right, on number 11, it says, find the length of a side of a square with an area of 75 square feet. Well, I know it's a square, so I know the sides are the same. So I could call the length of each side x, and when you take the side times the side, or x times x, you get x to the second. So x to the second is 75. Then I'm just taking the square root of both sides. I'm taking the square root of 75. I could round to the tenths. I could round to the hundredths. If we round to the tenths, this would just be 8.7 feet. It would only be positive because the length of a square cannot be a negative number. So it's just positive 8.7 feet. On number 12, it says, find the radius of a circle with an area of 100 square inches. So it's talking about the area of a circle. The formula for the area of a circle is area equals pi r squared. So I'm going to write my formula and I'm going to plug in what I know underneath. I do know the area is 100, so I'm going to put 100 below A. 3.14 is pi, and I don't know the radius. I need to get the r to the second by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by a 3.14. When I divide by 3.4, I'm going to get about 31.847 and so on. So then when I take the square root of both sides, I would get about a 5.6 if I rounded to the tenths. My answer would be 5.6 feet for the radius. It would not be a negative because you cannot have a negative radius. All right, last question today. Number 13 says a touch tank is in the shape of a rectangular prism and has a height of 3 inches. Its length is 3 times its width. The volume of the tank is 270 cubic feet. Find the possible solutions for the width and the length. Well, we have a rectangular prism and we're finding the volume. I know to find the volume of a rectangular prism, I have to take length times width times height. So my formula is volume equals length times width times height. I'm going to plug in 270 for my volume. My length is 3 times the width. So under length, I'm going to put 3W. My length is 3 times the width. My width is just W. But it also tells me that the height is 3 feet. So under height, I'm going to put 3. When I multiply 3W times W times 3, I get 9W to the second. And then I'm just solving by dividing by 9. When I divide by 9, I'll get W to the second equals 30. And then I'm taking the square root of both sides. So when I take the square root of 30 and round to the tenths place, I would get W to be approximately equal to 5.5 feet. Now the directions say find the length and the width. So if the width is 5.5 feet, I need to find the length. The length is 3 times the width. So I have to do 3 times the square root of 30. So on my calculator, when I take the square root of 30 and multiply by 3, I'll get approximately 16.4 feet if I round to the tenths. So the width would be about 5.5 feet, the length would be about 16.4 feet. All right, hopefully you understand. If not, you are welcome to email Mrs. Shope or Ms. Swan with any questions. Your assignment today is actually page 501 to 502, numbers 14 to 36 off. Thank you.